Do you have an example for us, David, of reinvented adaptations that you can think of, or an adaptation was loosely based, we'll say?
I've got ooh, gosh. I bumped that. That's
I
gonna.
did too. I thought mine's being attacked by the microphone.
So yeah, I've got an example of a totally reinvented adaptation.
I wonder if it's what I'm thinking about.
which is I haven't read the book. I've read little bits and pieces of it, but I wanna eventually dive into it because it's such an interesting way in which they twisted it. Was Starship Trooper.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Starship Trooper. So Starship Trooper was a novel originally written by a guy named Robert Heinlein, I do believe. And so basically, he presents this futuristic society, which is fundamentally democratic, but the price for participating in the democratic process is military service. So if you want to go on to be a part of the government or vote in elections or anything, you are required to serve in the military. And
Interesting.
essentially, it's almost Starship Trooper is almost like Robert Heinlein's sort of philosophical treatise. Am I pronouncing that word? Treatise?
A treatise?
A treatise?
Treatise.
I think it's just treaties, right? A treatise.
If you're addressing somebody as one.
Treatise?
Hit the Google mouth button.
The Google mouth button.
Trying to
Shows the mouth and how to pronounce it.
Treatise.
Treatise?
Yeah, I think it's treatise.
Yeah.
Okay, treatise. So it's like is sort of philosophical treatise on basically what he believes is going to be the ideal sort of motivating factor for human society.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
basically, his whole idea is that military service, having some sort of stake in the nation itself through military service, acts as a sort of unifying factor that would counteract the sort of cultural and political fragmentation we see in our own society. So basically, yeah, the whole story is just him is presented to sort of make the case for his philosophy regarding how society should be organized. As far as I've understood it, like I said, I've never actually read it, but it's on my list.
And the movie, like, it's only loosely because they're focusing more on like the battles and stuff.
So the movie, no, it's even worse than that.
Even worse.
The movie, directed by
Is the guy who did RoboCop? Is that what you're talking about? We talked about it just the other day.
Satirical film
Verhoeven,
adaptation.
Paul Verhoeven.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so directed by Paul Verhoeven. It's actually takes Heinlein's sort of philosophy and turns it on its head. So
Why would he do that?
So in the movie Starship Troopers, the government is authoritarian and pushes military service on people as a way of as a means of controlling them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I'm doing my part, you know.
so in the book you have the culture, everyone's sort of all in on military service being like a good thing for people to do. Like no one's coerced into doing it, but if you want to fully participate in society, that's the price you pay. And people are more than happy to do it. Or if they don't do it themselves, they understand why it's why it has to be that way, kind of a thing. And then in the
new movie.
In the movie, it's pushed from the top down by an authoritarian government, and you actually have the main character's parents who are independently wealthy and are actually basically disown him for joining the military.
Interesting.
Interesting. Huh.
So I wonder what they thought of the thought process of during the thought process to adapt it. Like what's going on in their head, seeing like what's going to appeal to a larger audience. And I wonder, it says the film came out in 1997.
See, I thought it was earlier than that.
I thought it was earlier than that too.
Yeah, I thought it was the 80s.
That's interesting.
It definitely has that 80s cheese to it, but it's
Maybe
kind of
that's why.
like a lot of 90s.
Well, it's Paul Verhoeven. It
It's
has
Paul
that
Verhoeven.
Paul Verhoeven cheese.
There's an
to it.
animated series from 1988.
Wait, really?
Oh,
Hang on.
From the
Click on it.
80s?
1988. That's the first adaptation.
Oh, it was an anime.
Whoa.
Japan got a hold of it, bro.
For democracy.
That was
baby.
when they had
about
money.
that.
That
We
was when
talked
their
about that,
economic
too.
stuff was pretty high. So they were
Interesting.
making money off of all the toy sales from like Gundam and everything. And like
really-
outsourcing from America.
Is there a way to get it? Is there a way for you to track that down for us?
I will find a way.
Yeah, find a way, because that'd be fun to watch.
It
and
was
track
a
it down.
Interesting.
How many episodes?
Well, I think it's an
6
excellent.
episodes.
I think it was
25
a
episodes.
6 episodes. Wow. I think that's an excellent example, David. I remember I haven't read the book or watched the movie, but I always hear people talk about Starship Troopers, and it's kind of gotten a little resurgence in the last couple, I'd say even 10 years. I mean, from people just talking about the concept of it, political debates about that concept, about citizen service that turns into citizen privileges, as well as like the game Helldivers that came out, Helldivers 2, where that's basically what it is. It's Starship
It's
Troopers,
greatly
basically.
inspired by.
For democracy, greatly inspired by. It's for democracy. And
All right, you
and
want
it's
the
done in
dub
a-
or the sub?
both. It's done in a very tongue-in-cheek way, but you kind of you get what they're saying. It's satire, and it's really fun.
It's interesting. Yeah, but that's a really good example of like, I mean, it'd be interesting to look at either the
Something that was loosely
commentary-
based on something, got its own identity from it, and then something
Well,
a
I feel
game
like
basing itself off of
That's
that loosely.
they took the theme and totally reworked it.
Yeah.
So
As far as I understand, Paul Verhoeven's goal was to basically dump all over Robert Heinlein's philosophy.
like on
Interesting.
purpose, he's
On
gonna take it. I'm
purpose.
gonna butcher it.
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, the movie itself is pretty entertaining, and I would say it's a movie that's worth watching, but it's not. But it's very intentional in the way that it sort of craps all over the message and theme of the book.
Yeah, because it's kind of thrown into the list of kind of like cheesy movies, right? Or so I've heard. I've never seen it. I've always been too scared to watch it because I was told it's really violent.
Well,
Got
also
cool looking bugs.
Well, you also have the aspect of like the 90s in general. A lot of films in the 90s and late 80s, especially into the 90s, where you had the 80s cheese. You always had the 80s cheese. You always had Commando
Yeah.
and how crazy it was. But then you also get stuff like, I believe, Escape to LA was in the 90s and stuff like that, as well as something like Starship Troopers, where it's still cheesy, but it brings a balance to it. Where it also brings
you
in some
gotta show
drama
it
and
to
seriousness.
everybody.
It brings into a drama seriousness, but also 90s I think did a better job meshing the two. And then you have the introduction of Quentin Tarantino's films and all that kind of stuff.
Well, it'd be
You
interesting
want me to
listen
read this disclaimer that the fan subbers put on here? So it was never translated. It was never translated into English. It was never
Wait,
translated.
it's a fan dub?
It's
for Starship Troopers?
There's a fan dub and fan. So fan subs are everywhere. But this
Yeah.
one, it's a disclaimer, just warning people saying
Okay.
1988 Japanese anime of Robert Heinlein's classic science fiction novel Starship Troopers has never been released on DVD. The only available source is a Laserdisc transcription that has accumulated
Whoa.
errors and defects through several generations of re-encoding. Because I'm sure they would pass it around to like all the cons and everything.
yeah, I'm sure,
You'd like
yeah.
daisy chain VCRs
Oh my
together.
God.
Despite the impaired quality of the video source, fan subs decided to fan sub the series so that a new generation of viewers could enjoy the adaptation of the story. We hope you enjoy it.
Interesting.
That's
Oh.
crazy. That's a piece of history.
I need
right
to
here.
watch that now and then
Yeah.
read the book finally.
Well,
so.
we'll get it later.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, Chelsea, what's your example of